Ingmar Bergman's 1966 film Persona is rife with thematic subtext, captivating imagery, and filmmaking prowess, all worth discussing. However, for this video in particular, I wanted to focus on the movie's themes of personal identity versus duality, as well as vulnerability and how this was explored between the two main characters, Alma and Elizabeth. To set the scene, Elizabeth is a stage actress who has fallen mute for indeterminate reasons, while Alma is a nurse hired to look after her throughout her recovery. As the two go to stay in a seaside cottage for this process, the two women quickly grow close as Alma shares much about herself with Elizabeth, including some very personal secrets. However, this relationship takes a dark turn once Alma discovers that Elizabeth is not as genuine as she appears, instead viewing Alma as simply some kind of experiment or pet project for her to have fun with. Their dynamic then grows incredibly twisted as they bring out the worst in each other, and the line between their characters grows increasingly blurred. Persona's psychological aspects come into play through its use of intimate cinematography and editing. In many of their scenes together, Elizabeth and Alma tightly share the space on screen to emphasize their growing connection, and when on their own, a majority of their shots consist of long and broken close-ups that range from medium to more extreme. As the tone becomes darker, that same intimacy transforms into a claustrophobic experience, as neither woman can escape the other despite how torturous their relationship now is, and neither can the audience. One scene in particular, however, and arguably the film's most memorable, highlighted this: Alma's confrontation of Elizabeth toward the end, where both are given a POV shot focusing solely on their faces throughout Alma's entire monologue. In this scene, it begins with a focus on Elizabeth, Alma sitting across from her off-camera as she describes to Elizabeth her own story of her pregnancy, which she regretted, only to unsuccessfully try to abort it before giving birth to a son she couldn't love. Throughout this entire exchange, Elizabeth switches between looking down at the table, ashamed, unable to look at Alma, and looking off to the side as if in protest. But the times that she finally does look at Alma, she looks petrified, indicating that everything Alma says is her ugly truth that she can no longer hide. The view fades in closer and closer on her face to where it too can no longer be hidden, and the left side becomes heavily shadowed from the increasingly harsh lighting. Once Alma accuses Elizabeth of being afraid of her own hatred for her son, a music sting blares, and the scene repeats, this time focusing on Alma. She maintains direct eye contact the entire time, as once again, the shot fades in closer and closer until her face fills the screen, and its right side is obscured by shadow. However, this time, once Alma gets to the point where the perspective on Elizabeth had previously stopped, the illuminated right side of Elizabeth's face briefly fades in over Alma's, the two completing each other in a horribly uncanny display. It then fades away, only for Alma to seemingly sense what had just happened. Her composed demeanor breaks as she, too, is overcome by fear, and shakily denies that she is Elizabeth, and that unlike her, she would want to be a mother, but is unable to complete the statement. Her final words, "I never," are then cut off before the right side of her face is once more replaced by Elizabeth's in a freeze frame, the score blaring again as the image fades to white as though to silence her denial. No matter how much she says otherwise, she and Elizabeth have functionally become one and the same, intertwined by the past sins and contempt that they have in common. This moment of the film presents to both women the unbearable realities about themselves that the other has revealed to them. Through their kindred spirit, they remind one another of themselves, and for this, they hate each other as much as they hate themselves, yet cannot tear away. This is what led me to my conclusion about what lies at the heart of Persona, the horror of seeing yourself in another person, and how destructive human vulnerability can be as much as it can heal. If it exists between two people that despise themselves as much as Alma and Elizabeth, then the subsequent truths are liable to destroy them. For if someone can't even recognize their own darkest truths, then how can they be expected to grow and change? In the case of Persona's two heroines, the ending afterwards seemed to indicate an unclean break. They do part ways, but the other's presence still lingers, leaving them now incomplete, missing their other malformed half.